to get better at something, which maybe I did just like, when I was a little kid.
My question is, what conditions do you, for a child, now you're talking about kids, do you set in order to, I don't know, breed grittiness? So to give an example.
Do you have kids?
I don't have kids.
Yeah.
Thinking about them though.
Okay, good.
So
I recommend them.
I'm a Colombian immigrant to the United States. I came here when I was 5 years old, eventually graduated at West Point. Low income household in New York City, 4 of us living in 1 bedroom. Mom, dad, sister, etc. So I don't know I still don't know what conditions were set for me to persevere, because I could have been easily in that demographic of Hispanics that end up in jail or whatever it is, especially in this city. So what makes me different, or people like me different than my peers that I went to high school with that perhaps did not?
Do you have any hypotheses? Do you have any guesses?
I mean, I think parenting definitely had a lot to do with it, as an example of the hardworking, immigrant parents, etc. But then outside of that, in the classroom, it may have been teachers. But at the end of the day, I still had to do the work, and I don't know.
And you probably see people who grew up in maybe not identical, but such similar circumstances, and they didn't end up, anywhere close to where you are. That is itself, I think, my life's work, right? Is to answer your question, and I only have an incomplete answer, but I will say this. First of all, you did inherit DNA from your mom and dad, and so when you see gritty little kids who have gritty parents, you have to at least pause and acknowledge the fact that half of their genes came from mom, half came from dad. They got shuffled up, and in part we are like our parents because of our shared genetic heritage. At the same time, it's absolutely unequivocal that parents model certain behaviors. It's usually the case, not always, there are exceptions, but it's usually the case that kids are modeling the work ethic and the passion of their parents. If it's not their parents, often there's another strong role model, like a particular teacher who had a big effect, or a coach, and so forth. So that's maybe part of the equation. I also think that a lot of grit comes down to kind of these virtuous cycles. You start to find that you have a thing for a certain sport that becomes a source of pride and success. People begin encouraging you. It's an upward feedback cycle of motivation, effort, and achievement, and it feeds itself. I think there are people who then are on the opposite spiral, which is, they get a little down about themselves. They stop trying. They prove themselves right because things don't go well, and they kind of spiral in the opposite direction. And Einstein is quoted, and I am not sure I can verify this, but somebody at Google can, as saying that compound interest is what we all really need to understand. It's like that is the mystery of the universe. And I think this compounding of, a little bit of grit, a little bit of effort, a little bit of success, a little more grit, a little more effort, a little more success. Like, if we could understand that compounding, then maybe we could understand why, kids like you ended up where you are, but we could also maybe understand why so many other, don't. And I would like Google to help me figure that out, by the way. So it would be,
You need a volunteer.
Great, thank you.
For time, I think we only have to one, right? If I'm right, is Angela expected to sign books at the end too? Oh, at the end. Okay, all right. So we have 5 more minutes. Should we do a question on the Dory? This is somewhat confrontational.
Yes.
I don't mean to.
Oh, that's okay. It's all good. Yeah, no, it's good. Wait,
I'll read it.
Let's do the hard one. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a study of 4,000 UK students published back in February in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, in which grit was not shown to be that predictive of academic success.
Instead, intelligence and conscientiousness were key. Do you have any thoughts on that study? Yes, I do have thoughts on that study. Actually, one of the co-authors of that study sent me the report before it was published, and here's what I said to him. So I'll tell you the full study. So there are thousands of British kids, about 16 years old, I think, who were going through the British school system, and their grit scores on these kids, and they're also their standardized math and reading scores on the UK test, right?
Or something.
It's something like that, I guess, right? Yeah, not British enough to know, right? But it's a standardized achievement test, and we've all taken them, so we know what they are. The finding is this: grit does predict their standardized test scores, but not quite as well as a measure of conscientiousness, which we were already talking about, dependability, being able to control that sort of thing. So yes, grit predicted, but maybe not quite as much, and also intelligence